Hello! Welcome to the Turret of Pleasure here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I am the Lord Chamberlain of the Enchanted Kingdom, Zipgun, and I'm your host. I'm going to go for another one of these Where Not to Start ones. I'm getting challenges from people to see how badly they can screw me up. And I got a pretty funny one from one guy who said, okay, where not to start with the band Soft Machine. And I went, oh boy. Now, Soft Machine, they're kind of hit again a little bit. There's a lot of archival stuff being dug out that's usually of fairly middling worth. But they were something of a force in the Canterbury scene in the 60s. And they were one of these bands, they went through constant personnel changes, and therefore they went through constant stylistic changes. And when they first emerged, they were a four-piece band. Robert Wyatt on drums and vocals, Kevin Ayers on bass and vocals, Mike Ratledge on keyboards, and David Allen on guitar. And they did a single called Love Makes Sweet Music, which is, kind of undistinguished British pop single of the time. And it, came out, didn't really do much of anything. And then when they were playing in France, coming back into Britain, David Allen, who was Australian, couldn't get into the country. And so he was forced to stay in France, where he formed Gong, and that's an endless story of its own. And they returned to Britain as a three-piece, and they did an album, strangely for those days, for an American record label, ABC. An American ABC was trying desperately to be a record label. They ultimately just gave up, and, oh shit, stupid thing. Mute it. This record label, they formed a label called Probe, ABC did. And they put out a whole lot of terrible records, but one of them they put out was the first Soft Machine record, which is pretty cool. It's pop music with jazz leanings. The songs are all very short, they all kind of roll into each other. Kind of like Sgt. Pepper's a little bit, I guess. And it was a bit of a sensation. People thought it was pretty cool. And they got a gig backing up Jimi Hendrix on his tour of America, which I don't know how much good it did them, because by the end of the tour, they were all crazy and the band kind of split up, with Kevin Ayers leaving the band. And he was replaced by a guy named Hugh Hopper on bass, who was not a singer. He was a really good jazz bassist. And their second album, which is I believe just called Volume 2, was sort of more of the same, a little bit more jazzy, a little bit more emphasis obviously on Robert Wyatt singing, because he was the only singer by this point. And they did some very good work during this era, but they very quickly went from being a pop band whose second album had about 15 songs on it, to being a British jazz fusion band whose third album, which was their first for Columbia Records, they got signed to a big label. Their third record was a double album with 4 songs on it. One of which had vocals, Robert Wyatt's Moon in June, which was to be their last record with vocals on it. The other 3 sides were instrumental fusion jazz of a very British type. Mostly Mike Ratledge wrote 2 of them, Hugh Hopper wrote 1. And then they went, and they had a bunch of fairly special guests on that record, but really it was just the trio with special guests. One of the special guests, a fellow by the name of Elton Dean, whose first name might sound familiar. He joined permanently as their sax player, and they went into Volume 4 as a 4-piece where there was no singing. Robert Wyatt got tired of this and left to do his own band and whatnot, and they replaced him with a guy named Phil Howard very briefly, and then ultimately with John Marshall, who stayed the course for the rest of their career. And as they moved into the 70s, they became more and more of an instrumental jazz fusion band. A good one. They were good. And they had a really unique sound. Certainly Mike Ratledge had a very unique sound. Hugh Hopper quit the band, and somewhere around number 6, I think it was, Elton Dean quit and was replaced by a gentleman named Carl Jenkins. And when Hugh Hopper quit, it was replaced by a guy named Roy Baddington. What? Baddington? Suddenly, Soft Machine was Mike Ratledge, the original keyboardist, and three guys who were essentially people that were in Ian Carr's Nucleus, which was another British fusion band, very much a fusion band, Ian Carr being a trumpeter. So really, they'd kind of turned into Ian Carr's Nucleus, except they were Soft Machine. And Jenkins kind of took over the band, and we all know what happened with him. He is now Sir Carl Jenkins, very well-regarded classical composer. I think he's the royal composer, maybe, now. And so they turned into more and more and more and more of a kind of a regular fusion band. They introduced guitarists with the record Bundles, which was their first for EMI Harvest. And the guitarist in question was Alan Holdsworth, who many find very exciting. And he quit, was replaced by John Etheridge. And then it kind of just fizzled out into whatever. There's still a Soft Machine touring. So where do you start with a band like Soft Machine? Well, that's a good question. Where not to start? Nothing on Harvest. So Harvest, other than maybe Bundles. Bundles is a good record. It's the, whatever you want to call it, Mark III Soft Machine, Carl Jenkins, Mike Ratledge, John Marshall, Roy Babbington, and Alan Holdsworth. It's a good record. I don't think it's the greatest record. Maybe not the place to start, although a lot of people would say that is the place to start because, of course, of Alan Holdsworth. My suggestion is, and there really isn't, again, is there one song you could start with? Well, yeah, and it's on the record I'm going to pull out, if I can find it. There it is. And this is the album Third. Third had 4 tracks on it. One of them was Moon in June. And Moon in June, the version on this is very interesting because it's super studio. It's weird. They do all kinds of crazy stuff in the studio. But there's a version on the BBC with just the 3 of them that is terrific. Features an incendiary organ solo by Mike Ratledge on his Lowry organ, which he was playing through Marshalls, and it's just the nastiest sound. It's great. And it's sort of, the Moon in June on the BBC session is, the lyrics were sort of specifically geared around that particular session. This lyric is slightly more generalized. This is a great thing to buy, by the way. These, I think, might be $30 now. I think they're still sort of in print. Most decent record stores should have them. This contains all their CBS records, cleverly entitled Third, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and Seven. And this basically has them going from the Canterbury pop phase, the very last of it on Moon in June, and well into the Carl Jenkins era, and ends just before they hired a guitar player. All of these records are very good. I especially like 7. Have a real soft spot for that one. Oh, I hear the Minister of Defense has recorded a breach. Well, we'll let him deal with that. Anyway, I'm keeping these short. Where not to start? Yeah, don't start with any of the Jenkins stuff necessarily. Maybe these last 2 Jenkins records are okay. I'd start with Third. Play it all the way through. It's great. It's got noise. It's got jazz. It's got some very nice melodies. It's got some sort of tape loopy Terry Riley kind of stuff, which still sounds pretty advanced. And it's got Moon in June, which is maybe Robert Wyatt's greatest work. So there you go. Soft Machine. There. In and out. Send more challenges. These are ridiculous, but they're fun. And don't forget to subscribe and all that other stuff. Notifications and look after each other. That's important. We'll dig out some more stuff and do more of these, and we'll get at you later. Thanks for watching.